I'm going to do a quick video about Damien Echols. Because I'm studying magic, I just came to view one of his magic podcasts on YouTube. They're really good, actually. His magic, the lectures he gives on magic are they're really interesting, and they're interesting um, not because he's studied other books and is regurgitating it, because his depth feeling of the occult and um, the levels, the feeling, it's quite interesting. So he has a new take on it, and yeah, I've been listening to them, and I just find them really interesting. I didn't know much about his background. I did watch a movie called Devil's Knot, maybe about 5 years ago, with Colin Firth about the West Memphis Three, of which he was one. So basically, the movie's pretty good, but I think it's been like taken down now. For those of you who don't know, the West Memphis Three were three men convicted as teenagers. They were all about 17 in 1994 of the 1993 murders of three young 8-year-old boys in West Memphis, Arkansas, America. Damien Echols, said to be the ringleader, was sentenced to death. Another teenager, Jesse Miss Kelly, to life imprisonment, and Jason Baldwin also to life imprisonment. And during the trial, the prosecution asserted that the juveniles killed the children as part of a satanic ritual. Due to the dubious nature of the evidence, as well as a suspected presence of emotional bias in court, that means the locals not liking teenagers that were into the occult. The case generated widespread controversy, was the subject of many documentaries. Celebrities held fundraisers to support efforts to free the men. The most notable one was Johnny Depp. They became friends. He focused mainly on Damien Echols. They became friends and got matching tattoos. And eventually, through all the pressure, there was a young lady involved, Laurie. She also helped and got him finally freed. And so he's freed. It's something called an Alford plea. I don't really understand much about it, but it seems if you admit guilt, they will let you out. So what happened? The three admitted guilt, got out, and then said, well, actually, we're going to sue, and we're not guilty. And then there was a whole round of publicity involving Piers Morgan, who got involved in saying, what's it like to be free now and to have this miscarriage of justice. It was mainly concentrated on Damien Echols, probably because he was charismatic, interesting, good looking. He had the good looking female legal assistant. Well, I don't know if she's actually legally qualified, but she certainly helped him in that way. So that was the sort of love story. So the media obviously had more interest in that than the other two. So it's quite an interesting case, and I noticed that most of my friends agree with that he's innocent. I have to say I don't know because I haven't studied it enough. I haven't gone through the evidence. I do look at him as a psychic and a medium, and I look at him and I can't feel a killer there in his energy, and certainly when you listen to him in the YouTube speaking, you can't hear a low frequency. A low frequency is always present in people that do those crimes. So if you listen to Dennis Nielsen, I mean murder for no apparent reason. If you listen to or demonic reasons, if you listen to Dennis Nielsen, the tapes, they're called his murder tapes, you could hear like a low frequency burr. Actually, I listened to it for like 2 seconds and it reverberated around me. As people may or may not no. As a child, as a 13-year-old, I think probably because I grew up in an orphanage, I was adopted and was given to a paedophile family. My father sexually abused me. He had a brother, and his brother was in a mental hospital in Ireland, St Brendan's, because he set fire to the house. So they were a disturbed family, a lower working class family, obviously disturbed. His father's brother came to England and joined the military, and had a daughter called Elizabeth Hart, and the cousins grew up together. My adopted mother Elizabeth Hart and Tommy Hart, who's in Dublin, but they went back and fro. And then he was 16 when she was 6, and they met at that age. And the family agreed, this strong Catholic family agreed to them marrying. How sick is that? And it's beyond sick, really, isn't it? So he waited, obviously attracted to her when she was 6, pause for sick noises, and the family agreed. Man, super sick. They already got one brother locked away, and for life, locked away for life. And so they got married when she was 16. He was 10 years old, so he would have been 26. And in that family, in that same Irish family, where the brother John was locked away in the St Brendan's, a criminally insane asylum for life, one of the siblings was a nun, and she was linked to the Vatican and also their child trafficking business the Catholics have, called the Crusades of Rescue. And so she plucked me from there and oversaw most of my life. And yeah, he sexually abused me. He was not interested in my adoptive mother, probably as she got older. Oh, God. Probably as she got older. Yeah, not interested in her anymore. Turned his attentions to me. She was very sexually jealous of that, and so beat me with all the rage that can be found when someone's sexually jealous. You know, you got my man. So she whipped me with a cane on my legs. And I was always told that I was evil, and always, you know, I always wondered why. And then the reason slipped out. Oh, you're born out of wedlock. Oh, you're a bastard. And oh, you're illegitimate. That was a word that was bandied around a lot. And so I found a book basically in her possession about Ian Brady. And, you know, Ian Brady's very interested in the occult, very dark, and adopted and a bastard. And it said in this book, you know, beyond belief, that he had killed because he was adopted and a bastard and illegitimate. So I thought, all right, so it is true. We're all evil. And so I tried to write to Brady, wasn't able to because he's in prison, and English prisons don't allow that. But then when he got transferred to the mental asylum, I managed to get a letter through. He asked me to visit him pretty quickly. I was just 22 and went to see him. I remember feeling a little bit disappointed somehow. Disappointed because I thought that I was going to learn something. I think I felt that I was going to learn something about evil. It's strange when you have a family that are very strongly religious. They almost like they grab God to themselves, like, you know, God is mine, Jesus is mine. My mother used to sing about Jesus in a way like, oh, Jesus is mine, and P.S. bitch, you don't get a look at, you know, you're evil, so go and find out who's your spiritual guy, because it's not Jesus, bitch. She didn't put it like that. It was more crazy making. My parents were very polite and it's almost like they had altars, hidden altars that were just, you know, psychos. That was only for my eyes. And so my father would take me off in a car. I would see that side of him, and then that side would disappear. And the neighbours and everyone else just saw that, oh, he's so nice, Tommy, he's so nice. Few people saw through him, which made me always feel uncomfortable, like my next door neighbour said, your father's really brutal, but he tries to hide it. And I remember feeling really scared, really uncomfortable. And I remember one of the nuns at the convent, Sister Mary Lou, said about my mother, your mother's demonically charged, she's evil. And that made me feel uncomfortable too. It was almost like I was guardian of the secret of who they actually really were. And so it was almost like I had to find my own God. So I guess when I read about Brady's crimes, he was said to be, supremely evil. And he'd done these evil things. The crime that I focused on the most, because it was the only crime that was described in the book I had read, beyond belief, was the axe murder of Edward Evans. And it intrigued me why somebody would do that, ask somebody to their house for tea, drink, apparently, and then just chop them up. It just seemed like, why? I just went like, why? Still, one can ask oneself why. There seemed to be a lot of blood around in the act. I wondered about that. I was massively curious, and so I met Brady, sat there with him. I didn't really know what to say because I thought I was meeting somebody that I would feel an otherworldly presence, because I had certainly felt it in reading the book by Evelyn Williams, Beyond Belief. Excuse me, I've got a cold. And but nothing, and it was almost like I felt like I'd wasted my time, because I'd wasted a lot of years on that, and the only way I'd got to see him, well, I thought it was how I'd got to see him was taking pictures of the area, up on the moors and the house where he used to live. But I don't think it was that. I think it was just I sent a photograph of myself, and I looked very young. I had that baby kind of face, and I just think it was that he said, come and see me, basically. But I felt, so I was sitting there, felt disappointed, felt that it's almost like when you get involved with people like that as well, they're very intense and they tend to put all their problems upon you. So you almost feel as if they're like, oh, I've got you now, and here's me, and I've got all these life problems, and do you want to solve them? And that's the feeling I got, like a burden had been put on me when I was sitting there. And one of the little nurses, that was a time when his visits were supervised. He later went on that he was allowed all of his visits alone. The visiting room, yes, it did have a glass, just a glass looking through, like in classrooms where, passing nurse can look through and see what's going on. Not saying you're in a position of danger, but spiritually, I didn't, looking back, I don't think it's a good idea. But then there was a nurse in the room. So the nurse would say, it was a big room, like visiting rooms often are. They're like, big sort of playrooms or whatever. And the nurse would be right over the far side reading a book or something. And you would be over the other side, sitting in an armchair next to Brady. And there'd be like a sort of coffee table. And there'd be other little armchairs around the room. So you could say stuff privately, whatever. So anyway, on the first visit, that first time, I spent, I think it was about an hour, maybe a bit more. It was a strain on me because I didn't know what to say. I felt the first gut-wrenching feeling of disappointment, and my interest in him just dropped to the floor. And I thought, well, this is like wrong. Wrong, I mean a waste of my time. And I didn't really know what I was looking for anyway. But I came out and I felt burdened by him. And the little nurse, little guy, very nice, showed me out and said, oh, you've been very kind to him, your letters. And I felt even more burdened because I thought, oh, here it's being recognised that I'm his you know, help her in some kind of way. And it's almost like I felt I'd signed on the dotted line to be a mental health nurse, but for free, sort of in the community care kind of thing. And I felt very, very burdened. And I thought, how do I get rid of this person? And I felt a letter came at home saying, oh, you know, you are very, very beautiful, and I'm sure you know that already. It was a bit petulant, I thought, and I just ignored it, and I thought, oh, great, because, and then everybody knows the story of what happened. The press became interested in me, swept me up, and printed all those stories about me that were complete bullshit. And so that became my life. I then dated journalist Phil Hall, and learned how to be a tabloid hack, and eventually went into newspapers myself. Before that, I'd been a private detective. So I straddled both worlds. And Phil Hall persuaded me after that to write to Brady again. It's like, oh, that's what journalists do. You want to be a journalist, don't you? And so I did. I took it up again in the mindset of a journalist and wrote to him again. It doesn't really end that way. If you know somebody, you know somebody. At that point, the years that I knew him were ticking up, you know, and you get to know someone, you get to know them, and they get to know you. And you know, he said, you know, do you change your appearance? And I wondered what he meant by that. And I thought, how, what? He wanted to know if I was still blonde. He maybe sent a picture of myself, which I did. Then as soon as I sent it, he said, oh, come and see me again. And that was in 1995. And so I went to see him again. And that time, he said, my visits are going to be alone. And, you know, are you afraid that I might bite you? I think Hannibal Lecter had come out at that time, and he was obsessed that it was based on him. Of course, it wasn't based on him, but he was obsessed by that. And so he was on this, like, I'm going to bite you and all this. And I didn't think anything of it, but I was kind of pretty detached then. I mean, the abuse I'd had racked up, and I was a little bit shut down in a lot of ways. I could get myself in positions of danger and not really care. And so I didn't really, now in that position where I read that, I wouldn't go, I'd be too scared. I would think, is this person going to attack me in some kind of way? And I remember I was seeing hypnotherapists at the time to try and access my childhood memories a bit more, to feel them, because I was just, had post-traumatic shock over them, but I wasn't feeling them. And so she said, don't go. And I said, but why not? And she said, well, what if he gets a fork in his hand and smuggles it, you know, in his pocket and scratches it down your face? And I said, but why would he do that? And she said, just because he can. And thinking back now, I would have more that mindset. I would think, well, hell's yeah. You know, of course he might do something like that. But then I didn't. I said, oh, he's not going to do that. And so I went along, and the visit was alone. He came marching into the room. I was very late, and I rang Peter Strickland, his psychiatrist, and said, I'm not going to make visiting times. And Peter said, don't worry, just come along anyway. Looking back, I think I was an experiment for Peter. Anyway, went in, sat down. He came in. It was getting dark, more or less, by then, you know, kind of on the crossover, because it was winter. And I was left alone with him. It didn't feel any different from the times before, because the nurse would always be like over the other side of the room and reading. So you thought, you know, okay, you know, on the second time I saw him, there was a bit of a creep there who butted into my conversation. But, you know, the first time it was someone who just didn't appear to be listening in. Perhaps they were. You never know what recording devices is put in rooms like that anyway, you know. So there I was sitting with him. The door was closed, but now and again I saw a face appear and just look. But it's obviously, you know, nothing was, you know, it wasn't going to attack me. So we chatted on. They left me there for about 2 hours. over time, I was starting to panic, not because I was scared, because the conversation was running dry, and I was feeling exhausted. And I thought, I just need to, this is too much now. And yeah, I wasn't spiritually afraid either, again, because I was pretty shut down. And I think anybody else probably would have been. You know, he often wears dark glasses, but, you know, he took them off that occasion. And when it came to the end of the visit, I was so relieved. I went to give him a hug, and he leaned down and shoved his tongue in my throat. Well, he didn't actually, I don't know, it was into my mouth, but it managed to get itself all over my face. And my whole face is like wet and drenched, and I felt weirded out. The nurse came and said, "Oh, you have to go." I said, "I want to go to the toilet." She could clearly see what happened. I went into the bathroom, felt pretty strange, put makeup on, and then came out, and there was nobody around. There was just a little guy with a bald head. Or did he have a beret on? I can't remember now. He was a little guy. His face looked kind of strange. He either had a bald head or a beret, or took it on or off, something like that. And I said, "Is there anyone to take me out?" He didn't reply. I felt paranoid of him because I thought, you know, I didn't know who it was. Walked down to Brady's room, knocked, went in. He was sitting on the bed, looking pretty disturbed, actually. Eventually, he helped me call someone. No, he didn't help me call someone. I came out, and somebody was there and said, "Oh, you've been in there. Oh, you're still here," or something like that, and made a joke about it. So eventually I was allowed to get out, and as soon as I got out, I felt completely weirded out, and I got to the station and got on the train. Don't know how I made the train journey, and went straight to this woman I was seeing for hypnotherapy, and just banged down her door. I literally banged down her door. I'd heard of that being done before, and I never thought, you know, I'd be someone who banged down someone's door. But I remember striking my fist against the door, and I just kept banging just with my fist. And she helped me upstairs, and she said, "Where you been? What happened? What happened?" And I said, "Something happened." And she said, "What?" And I managed to get out what happened. And she said, "Well, you need a brandy then." And she gave me a brandy, and I drank the brandy, and finally I was like on the ceiling, and then I finally came down into my body, and she said, "You've been in shock." And I said, "I don't really get why." And she said, "Because he killed people." And I kind of got what she meant, but I don't know. Was it that? I don't know. I obviously clearly disassociated. I didn't know then I was capable of doing that. I'd clearly disassociated, perhaps at some point, perhaps straight after, perhaps in that bathroom. No, I doubt it, because I went down to his room. It must have been when I came out. Because there might be a no. I do remember. I do remember going to the station. I do remember sitting on the train. I don't know, actually. I don't know, but clearly I must have disassociated, and then I came back to normal. I was sufficiently moved enough to want to go out to Los Angeles. I've been reading about primal therapy, a therapy that Ted Bundy wanted to go through. I read about it. John Lennon had done it. book, Primal Scream by Arthur Janoff. I'd read it, I'd come across it in the library, but it was like something was telling me to go to the library. Now I went to the library and it was like something was saying to me, get a book, and it was like, and I looked and I couldn't find a book, and then I was trying to leave and it was like, no, you can't leave yet, get this book. And so I said back to this like communication, okay, well show me where the goddamn book is, because I'm not going to hang around in this smelly library. So I let myself be almost taken. It just went straight to a shelf. My hand went straight out, picked up the Primal Scream, and I left. And I read it and applied. And I was all ready to go after that experience with Brady. I literally went back to my small flat and packed up straight away. And I was working for the News of the World at the time, only little bitty bits. And I had gone with Greg Miskey to a boxing match and told him about the up-and-coming visit with Brady. He said, yeah, you should do it. And, we'll do a story on it. Oh, he's trying to be Hannibal Lecter and bite you and all this kind of stuff. And you've got to get close to him and all this. So I had thought I was being a good journalist, basically, but rather allowed myself to be in a bad place. I just jumped on a plane, left the job, which seems strange now, but I just wanted to get there. And that's a strange place. They really change. It's very aggressive. It's very brutal. Basically, if you're a house, they rip up your floorboards and see what's underneath. And they don't just like remove the floorboards. They rip and smash and tear. I hope Barry Bernfeld isn't offended by that, but they do. Basically, you go and sit with your therapist for a week, or is it 2 weeks? I remember going along to the Primal Institute in Los Angeles and having an interview with Barry Bernfeld, who ran the institute. And it seemed I was at the wrong place because I said, oh, aren't you the Arthur Janoff's place I've been reading about? And he said, well, Arthur Janoff set up the place like a couple of miles from here. We're a split off, and by his wife, I'll call her name. And I said, I'm in the wrong place then. I meant to go to the Arthur Janoff place. And he said, well, I've been given therapy by Janoff. And I said, but no, I need to get, Janoff. And I sat there listening to him, and suddenly something came upon me. And I said, if I can have you as my therapist, and I'll stay here. But if not, I'll go. And it was literally $5,000 you have to put down to start. And it was literally all I had. And again, something I wouldn't do now. It was all the money I had. And he said to him, well, I haven't got space. I'm sorry, I can't see you. So I said, that's fine then. And I got up and left. And he had got my phone number, etc. I was staying in Hollywood in a shared house. And the phone rang, it was him, and he said, welcome to Primal Therapy, I'm your therapist. How are you feeling? I was like, I don't know, how are you feeling? And I was pretty pleased. He said, come down and pay, whatever, when you're ready. We start tomorrow. And tonight, you've got to go and get yourself a teddy bear from a shop, and you've got to go and see the film When a Man Loves a Woman. So I had to get myself that movie, When a Man Loves a Woman, for some reason. And then it began, and I basically sat in this padded room with him. The lights are dimmed. And you talk about, well, anything really, the day, your past, whatever you feel like talking about. And he will be, this is how it happened. He was like completely on my side. So, when you're talking to people can be, quite sort of, I call it cuntish. But, you can say something to someone and they can be a bit off, and you can feel a bit, you shouldn't really see that was a bit bitchy, or, I'm very wary with other people because I can get very hurt very easily bruised. It's almost like I'm already bruised, so I have to be careful when I'm interacting with people. I'm uber wary. And what happened with Barry, he anything I said, it was like he was on my side. So like completely. So I'd be sharing things, and he would say back things that were like, like a really, really good mother. I've mothered my son in that way. Not in a way where you can do no wrong, but in a super loving way, almost like Jesus. And that's who he began to remind me of. He was very good looking, but he reminded me of Jesus Christ. It was And I remember I was living with my friend Lucy. I moved then to share a flat with a young girl. I was young as well. We did some modelling together in LA, and we were doing mermaids one time. We went out, we were mermaids somewhere for a promotion. We were coming home, and she was unlocking the door, and I felt like this massive punch in my stomach, and I wondered, I was like winded, and she goes, "You all right?" And I said, "Yeah, just give me a minute." And I said, "Oh my God!" And she said, "What is it?" She goes, and I said, "I'm in love with him. I love him so much." And she said, "Oh, the guy down there, this creepy guy lived down there." And I said, "No, Barry." And it was the start of a massive transference. And I think once they know that you've got this transference burning, they then stop those meetings. You no longer have them, and you're thrown into something called big group, where it's Barry or whoever your therapist, and sitting in a circle with about 20 others. That's called big group, and then there's a smaller group. But it's often, I suppose, 10, no less than 10. And what happens, each one has to speak and talk about whatever they want for about 5 or 10 minutes. If you don't get to your feelings, the others are allowed to shout at you. Or, if you're saying something needy, they're allowed to say, say I might say something, and they might say, "Well, you're being very needy of Barry. Why didn't you just be honest about?" And so then you would have to look at Barry and say, "I need you." And then sometimes that would make you cry because you would remember times when you needed and there was nobody there. And then you would lay on the floor with your head down on a cushion and cry. And so at any given point in time, one or two or three people would be wailing and crying during the group. Sometimes people would be angry and they would be encouraged to stand up and punch the walls. So a lot of the time, many of the guys would be punching the walls. There was a German guy called Dieter who would really get stuck into punching the walls and talking in German when he did it. It was like kind of, I used to find it amusing. I mean, you could say exactly what you wanted. Like sometimes, say a guy would share, and I would find it amusing and think, "Oh, he sounds like Woody Allen." I would be allowed then to say, "You remind me of Woody Allen. What you said was just struck me as really funny." And he'd maybe be sharing about how his mother abused him, and then he would cry. And so it also got out your own inappropriateness and yeah, it wasn't very much fun when someone better looking than me came, a French girl, and liked Barry, and that wasn't great. I remember asking a girl, "Does she think I was better looking than the French girl?" The other girl said, "Yeah, she is better looking than you," and I went into a kind of a ball of pain and felt suicidal and was crying and felt myself go almost off to a different place. And this is what the primal therapy is for. I felt myself going into this other place. It was in the middle of the group. Barry then came over and put his hand on my back and started talking to me like a mother I'd never had, because I'd never known a mother. I'd known a torturer, and my so-called natural mother had just dumped me. So it's like he started talking to me like a mother, and almost like I was a baby, and it pushed me further and further into something. They call it pushing you into the pain, and the idea is you feel all your pain and everything that's stored in the subconscious, and your subconscious becomes conscious. And it's new and experimental. Even back then it was. And a lot of people ended up in mental homes because of it, or permanently suicidal. You definitely have suicidal feelings during it. And I was pushed down, and I felt myself sinking into something. It was almost like I went back to being a baby, and I was crying so deeply, deeper than deep. And I like a deep cry, but this was even deeper. And I got scared and just stood up and pushed him off and walked out. He was very angry with me later. He said, "You're right in the middle of a primal. You didn't trust me." And it's true. Now, looking back, I would go right into it because it can be really cleansing. If I had the money, I'd go back and do finish off primal therapy. But it got me to a point where I could barely walk down the road, and I came back to London in a really bad state, actually. I was scared of everything and got in a position where I could just sit in front of Coronation Street. I couldn't watch any TV that was maybe had tension in it. I watched Coronation Street. I had chips every day as like a sort of a comfort. I didn't speak to anybody, and I eventually resumed working for the newspapers from home, and it was really difficult. So I'd got to that point, and I'd forgot about Brady. I wrote a book about my life called Searching for Daddy. I didn't want to call it that. I wanted to write about Brady. I still had a bee in my bonnet about people like him being called evil. I'd obviously known him then for a long period of time, and I didn't feel he was evil. But what I'd experienced during the primal therapy was having visions of his murders, and almost like I'd had something dark put inside me. So I started to become aware that there was something else involved in murders like that, child murders, when they're vicious, that there is some kind of entity involvement. And it made me curious, and so I wanted to write about it in a book. And also, I had become, when I was in New York, I started to, when I was going off to sleep, started being able to communicate with spirits, like ghosts, basically. I would suddenly feel like a shimmering in the air, and I would look, and there wouldn't be anyone there, but I would be able to talk to them. And so I'd been to the doctors and, got fully examined. They said, "No, you haven't got anything wrong with you. Some people have that. Just, learn to live with it." So I'd gone to spiritualist places, and they'd been pretty pleased with me there and tested me on psychometry, where you touch something and you can read someone by touching something. And so I'd had this, and I thought, is this linked in some kind of way, with all this being called evil or whatever, and what does it all mean? So I wanted to write a book about meeting Brady and why I did, and my own experience of the psychic stuff. And he was very involved with the occult. He had read Crowley. He didn't like him. He guided me to other books and used the tarot a lot. And he was pretty much up to his balls in the occult. But so was I. I was very interested. So we talked about that. I would say mainly talked about that because I certainly wasn't interested in his other interests. It was politics, British politics. So mainly spoke about that, I'd say. And so I tried to examine the whole hidden thing of all what he had done, and so I wrote this book, and nobody wanted it. It sort of annoys me to think about. You get people that write these true crime, and they regurgitate what has gone on. They add little, "I investigated this. I went to the house and knocked, and I'm an investigator, true crime investigator," and people suck it up, and it's just shit. And then when you get someone that has experienced something, like I had experienced something with Brady, and I had got something to share that, people more learned than me could have made something of, and nobody wanted it. So looking back now, even it's wrong, that kind of thing. What happened, I came across an agent who liked the child abuse side of my experience of child abuse and said, "Oh, you should make it a misery memoir," and found a publisher. they wanted the title Searching for Daddy, even though I'd never, ever in my entire life searched for my missing father. I met eventually a guy called Tom Hogan. I wasn't even interested. I didn't meet my so-called mother. I spoke to her over the phone and just not interested. You know, she was pretty damn nasty. Didn't even say sorry. Eventually said to me that I wasn't me and that her real child was still out there and that I had stolen her real child's details. I said, "Who do you think you are, you stupid bitch?" And haven't spoke to her since, and wouldn't ever speak to that creature. You know, what I would say is she couldn't handle her guilt. You know, she dumped her own flesh and blood. Her family had gone along with it, and the child had gone straight into being used as a sex slave and beaten, and she couldn't handle that. And I said to her, I emailed her later, I said, "You know what?" I said, "You think you're not going to get karma for what I suffered?" I said, "You know, just go," because she was young. Oh, I was just so young back then. Not one word of a sorry after she'd heard what I'd been through. I said, "You know what, mate? I don't care about your." I was young. I was young. I said, "You still got stuck in there." I said, "You will pay. You will suffer karma for what you put me through." I said, don't be under any illusions about that." So I had no real interest in either of them. Pretty damn disappointed as most adopted kids. They want it to be like, somebody like Roger Moore perhaps, but pretty just, they were very curious about me and I could sense that, and so I blocked them. He died. She sadly isn't dead yet. An ever offence to me that she carries on living, this individual. She actually said things to me like, I said, "Well, I've got half brother and sister, can I see what they look like?" And she goes, "No, I have to really find out what you're like first, because, what you've been through makes you quite rough, and, maybe you would hurt them." I said, "Hang on, one of them's a boy, a man, what the hell? Hurt him, what, maybe a puncher?" You can hurt people in other ways than puncher. I just thought, wow, you skank. I still can't even bear the thought of that individual. What a skank. I actually said to her, "Man, I don't think I'm blood related to a coward like you, and a crawling coward." So I actually have a half brother and sister. And as an orphan that's never, apart from my son, never known a blood relative, I wouldn't mind seeing what they look like even, but no, not allowed that. So be careful if you're adopted, you ever think of looking up your real parents. It might just be something very traumatic, but I didn't let them anywhere near me to hurt me. My so-called father's daughter, I spoke to her on Facebook. She didn't want me to come to his funeral. I asked her why. She said, "Well, you're not connected to him. You're a bastard." What, it's just what, these people are scum. These people are scum. Just completely, their attitudes towards, it's just bad. So I don't want to meet them. And hopefully my details were mixed up, for sure. They both had dark brown eyes. My eyes are blue. It's like, they're an unmistakable clear blue. So how can two dark brown eyed people with dark brown hair make a blue eyed blonde? I don't know. So the Catholic Church maybe did some mixing up there. Had to God, that's true. Because they also got my birthday mixed up. So I don't even know what day my birthday is. So let's hope I'm not related to scum like that for sure. That would hurt other people, that take pleasure in hurting other people, that haven't suffered pain and yet dish it out. So back to what happened to me. So I published this book that I didn't like, didn't agree with, hated even. And I was working as a journalist. I'd done a lot of stuff on the Real IRA. I'd gone out to live in Belfast. I'd had a relationship with the second in command of the Real IRA. I don't know why I did that. At the time, my head told me that I was going to write a groundbreaking book on the Real IRA, and it was going to make me super rich. And so I pushed and pushed, and try to get close. And that really is the only way to get close for a woman when you're dealing with a group of tight-knit men. You choose one and move in, which is what I did. And the book never got written. There was a book, which is strange. And of course, going down to Dundalk and South Armagh and those areas like I did, and staying over in his house, thinking back now, it's absolutely insane, because I'd been a private detective, I'd worked for ex-MI6 officers. All it took was him to find that out and think that maybe I was somehow working for the ex-officer. You know, probably wouldn't have done. They're not that stupid, but you never know how paranoid people can get. And so sometimes I did get the feeling I was spying on him in this weird kind of way. You know, I would walk through, you know, his house, and I would be touching everything and picking it up and running my fingers over it. In a way like I was psychometrizing it, but you know, I mean, sometimes I think I was, but I always told myself, well, it's for your book, it's for your book, that's why you're so curious about him. And I don't know, the book never got written. Then I came back to England, and I was watching TV. I got pregnant with my son. I was watching TV. He was, at this time, jumping forward, 5 years old. Watching television, and the phone hacking had started with the News of the World. I had brought in an not an ex-MI6 officer, but one of the guys, John Boyle, who worked for that crowd. I had introduced him to Greg Miskew. I'd known for a long time Greg Miskew, and he got on. Then Greg Miskew nicked his office boy, Glenn Mulcair, and the phone hacking thing happened, and the News of the World crashed. And I was left without a job, really, because they kicked out any private detectives or anybody that had that background, even though I had helped them get front page after front page after front page. The Daily Mail dropped me, all of them dropped me all at once, so I was left from earning a lot of money to little. And of course, I hadn't saved, I hadn't, you know, I bought a house but then sold it, making no profit. I think I made a loss because I sold it in 2008, and things got bad, and they started to get really bad and really scary. And I was at the point where it was really scary. I was watching TV one night in my rented home then, and my son was 5, a single mother, no employment, and Kenneth Bianchi came on, and he was in Alta. He kept going to Alta, and he was saying to the camera, you're the one who's trying to get me to leave his body. And apparently this altar called Steve had killed the 13 girls. And I felt a kind of fascination grow within me. And I thought, no, you don't write him. That was my first thought. And I thought, no, you don't write him. It was like wrestling with a part of myself that I thought, you know, I don't want to get deeply involved with someone like that because of what happened with Brady, that inadvertently got deeply involved. And I felt somehow crushed by some kind of darkness he had within him. And I didn't want to go there again. But I found myself writing to him. And it was almost like I would write to him, spend an hour or so doing it. I would go and post the letter, feeling a sense of excitement. And then after I'd posted the letter, I would be standing in the street, and it's almost like I would think, hang on, what have I been doing for the last couple of hours? And then I would remember and think, why did I do that? And that went on. I eventually, very quickly, again, like Brady, Ken invited me to see him more or less straight away. And I remember telling Chris Berry D, we'd made friends around that, frenemies, around that time. And he was a little awful for me when I said, I've got an invite to go and see him, because he'd worked very hard to get 5 minutes with Bianchi, and so his nose is a bit put out of joint that I'd got an invite to go and sit with him for 8 hours for 2 days. And he said, you're not going to go. And I said, oh yeah, I'm just going to leave it. You know, I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, I'm an investigator. Yeah, I'm just going to say, no, I'm not going to go. Anyway, I went. It was a very long journey. Most of it's on a little plane. It flies into the mountains. it was pretty nasty journey. I had to take my son. My son vomited on the little plane, and but the hotel we stayed because the Guardian paid for me to go out there. The hotel was free. It's called the Hampton Inn, and it was beautiful. They had a swimming pool. They had like amazing breakfast. It was one of the best hotels I've ever stayed in Walla Walla. It was rocking, and my son and I had an amazing time there. So, to cut a long story short, I met Bianchi. It's in my book, In for the Kill. I don't advise you to buy it because I don't get anything out of it. Because the publisher, after publishing it, disappeared, so I never got a penny. So all those years of researching, all those years of writing it, all the year of editing it with Elsa Bathgate, who worked for Mainstream and, really pushed me on editing. She didn't make the changes. She was like, no, this needs more description here, or, cut this, or... So I had to work with her editing it, and literally it took a year, nearly a year, but it was exhausting because, it was basically on some parts, we'll cut all this and replace it with talking about that and talking about this, and it was draining, and all that just to get no money, and there I was, penniless, and trying to support a track. It was really I'm trying not to cry because it hurt me badly, and it hurt my feelings towards writing, and so I didn't see any money of it. I don't know how many copies it sold. At that time, Brady was trying to kill himself, and so the news media wanted to talk to someone who'd met him, and the BBC knew me. So I basically got called, went on BBC TV, went on BBC Radio, went on just massive publicity. And they all mentioned that book. So I would say, I'm not going to name him, but the guy who runs Mainstream made a lot of money out of my book and just kept it and didn't give me any. Which, all power to you, mate, keep it, mate, I don't want to earn money out of crime anyway, so stuff it. Or let your wife buy some nice, silk ones. He didn't like me making that comment on Tampax, but basically, you robbed me, mate. So there we go. And, in publishing, you do get that. People, you write stuff, people want to steal it. Sometimes they do steal it. Sometimes they make it into what they want it to be. When it's not simple as, oh, you got something. Even J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, I worked as a private detective on a case of a man who sent a book in to the same agent, was about a boy wizard who had this school, and, oh no, we don't want that book. Next thing J.K. Rowling does boy wizard. This happens. I tell you what, if I submit my book to an agent and it turns out written by somebody else, I will absolutely go apeshit. It was bad enough when Helen Fielding, the author of Bridget Jones, did The Strange Life of Olivia Jewels, which is my life, but it flopped, so good. I don't think these people that do that, I don't think they prosper. And they might seem to prosper, but then I think in other ways they don't, because it's not right, it's someone's art, but it's lethal. The world of publishing is lethal. You can get your stuff stolen, you can get it taken and not paid even though you're supposed to. Obviously I had a contract with Mainstream, they're part of Trans World, but that part of them folded just on that point of never mind, but it affected my relationship to writing, and then after I tried to write a novel, but that flopped because I don't write in the way such as my ex-boyfriend's sister writes and gets people say, oh, it's so nice, it's so middle class of you. Maybe it's my plot line is poor, I don't know, but I don't think it is. So I got to the point of knowing Bianchi. Bianchi and I, exchanged letters, weekly letters, very long letters. Was I attracted to him? Hand on heart, I was. I did get attached to him. I think I was very needy. I was very alone at that point. I was a little bit ostracized by the middle class married woman in the area. My son was bullied at a certain point by one of their kids, well, the church being gang of their kids, and I had gone on TV about it, and I was pretty cut off, pretty lonely. It was just me, and yeah, I felt really bad. I was needy, and he was like there saying, "It's okay. This is just a blip. This is just a blip. You'll be okay. You've got your intelligence, and he was supportive actually, and so I sort of felt myself like leaning back on that, like it was pillows, and I did feel attracted to him, and yeah, so that really went in a horrific direction, which I won't go into. And the book came out, I sent it to him, didn't speak to him, and then I had the psychic attack, which was really bad. Just really bad visions. I would be sitting there with a friend having coffee, and I would start to see them maybe beheaded or maybe pinned to the cross, bleeding. Happened a lot. I knew psychically it was Kenneth doing it to me. I went to a priest. I worked out how to make it stop. Basically, called on Jesus Christ. I knew it was him. It happened to somebody else. Although Kenneth says now, oh no, he just says that because well, whatever. It certainly did happen to me. Now, then recently, I started to learn magic because of that. Because what happened next after the publication of In for the Kill, somebody contacted me through Fritz Springmeier's Facebook and said, someone called Anna Hart, and said they believed, after reading my book, My Life Story, that I was an MK Ultra victim, that I was a monarch butterfly, as they call it. Now, I hated reading this because it was about mind control, etc., and I thought, oh God, because I was getting trolled, and I know who I was trolled by on Amazon under In for the Kill. Now there was good reviews, but there was trolling, and it was trolling by another crime writer that gets nasty in the true crime world, and basically it was weird because it was all around the real IRA. I expected, at least because I admitted to being attracted to Ken in the book, to be about like that, but there was none of that. It was basically the trolling was around the real IRA. And this guy, I think it was a guy, I don't know, there was a woman involved too, was saying, oh, you didn't meet the real IRA. Now, it was strange because anyone and his mother can meet the real IRA. You just head on down to the Emerald Bar in Dundalk. You might get beaten up, but you can go in and meet them. And so it was like really strange that they would say that. But it was around that, and it was going on, but it was getting me down. It was just getting me down because I don't think it triggered my parents, my adopted parents, who would attack me in that way. I would say something like, "Oh, I got high marks in an exam," and they would say, "No, you didn't," and I would say, I did. I got 70%," and they would go, "No, no, you didn't," and it was like abuse in that same kind of way. And it didn't make sense. So the more I argued back with them, the worse it got in that cool, detached, I'm not going to get angry. I'm just going to know you're a liar. No, you didn't meet the real IRA. Come on now. Little girly fantasies. It was like, and I'd written about them in the News of the World with my byline in the Sunday Times. And it's such an easy thing to do. They're out there in Belfast. They're not Brad Pitt. They're not rich either. You can go along to the bars where they drink and say, "Hey, hi." It was like absurd in a way, but it's just because it was just like my parents the same way. I would say to my dad, perhaps, "Oh, I've just got the bus. I went to Uxbridge and shopped." He would look at me and say, "Why are you lying?" And I'd say, what do you mean? And he'd say, you can't get on a bus and go to Uxbridge. And I'd look back and say, why? You just get the bus at the end of the road and it goes to Uxbridge after an hour. And he would look at me and say, you can't get on a bus and go to Uxbridge. And I'd be like, but why not? And he said, you've got the guts to do it. And it'd be like, but it's, Dad, it's getting on a bus though to Uxbridge. It's not Lebanon, you know. And they would just say that kind of thing. And it was like a similar kind of thing. And then it was in that position of feeling that depression, because this person would literally, and okay, I would check to see what they had said, and it was a ritual. As soon as I would wake up in the morning, I would want to do it straight away. But I think, no, leave it. Then I would have my coffee, and it would be in my head, and I would like, right, log on. And then I would look see what they'd said. They would add something like contemptuous, you know, to me, and I would get triggered, feel depressed. It was just like Dad was there, and I was stuck in a room with my dad saying to me, no, you met the real IRA. You can't even get on a bus to Uxbridge. Don't talk wet. And it was like this stuck with my dad, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And of course, normally I would deal with things like that with a lot of aggression. I'd rip into them and say a lot of nasty things. I'm good at that. But you can't, because on that kind of forum, you have to be polite, or you get banned. So I had to respond in a polite manner. I didn't have the tools to do it. I didn't have the tools. I just had to suck the abuse up like I was stuck with my father again, and my mother. It was weird. It was a horrible time. And so I started to feel, when these attacks used to go on, I used to run to a church over in Hayes, where I grew up, and I used to sit in front of a picture of St. Jude and cry and pray. And it was almost like I felt that this person was sticking in like black nails in my body. That I remember, even I went to there's a crucifix there, and I remember touching one of the nails they got in the foot of Christ, and just feeling it, thinking that feels like, it's like when this person speaks to me, it's like it's stabbing right deep in me. And I suppose now, if I look back and read what they said, it would, you know, a lot of it's gone now. I used to hack a friend I know to find out the identity of one of them. Oh God, it was this just turgid twat. And he was linked with the other true crime writer woman that's thinks she's headed in a direction of true crime queen. Whoa, how nice. I'm sure Jesus really fits, a great thing to be. And they were a little group harassing me because I had dared to meet 2 serial killers, and you know, they wanted to have this accolade of true crime star who can tell the world about what serial killers are actually like. They can go and run with that. I'm not interested in it. And so I had, when this woman contacted me and talked about the mind control, I thought, oh, do I really need now something like this? And I remember I met my friend in Kew Gardens, Julie, and I said to her, this person has said that I've been under mind control. And she said, oh, what do you think about that? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know much about it. And I said, I'm just scared that I'm going to become the spokesperson for MK Ultra and mind control. And she said, well, why would you think that? I said, I just got this dreadful feeling, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be, you know, I'm already someone saying, oh, you met the real IRA, you're a liar. I mean, something that anyone right now can go and do if they want. I mean, I'm sure, you know, I'm sure they're still in the Emerald Bar. And so I thought, God, imagine coming out and having to say something like, mind control is a real thing. They would have me for breakfast, dinner, lunch. I said I couldn't take it. So I said, I don't want to speak to this woman. And yet this one was very nice. She was very pretty, very sweet. And I thought, oh God, I can't block her. But I was dying to block her. And she put me in this little group on Facebook. It was called Overcomers Ministry. And I didn't bother. I was just in it, but I didn't bother going there. And then one day I was bored and I went there and I was talking to another girl called Louise who was in there. And I was talking about having blocks. I'd always wanted to lift blocks in my head. And I believe behind it is the worst sexual abuse of my father. Because when he took me to Dublin, I remember times in the car, I remember times in the bed we shared in Dublin when I was like 5 and 6, 7. But there was one really big event there in bed with him where I remember the next morning it was almost like a part of me was taken and I woke as a sliver of myself. And I want to get with whatever that act was, and I know the various acts that went on, but whatever that particular one was, I wanted to get full recall of it. And I'd spent a lot of time. I'd went to the Priory with Dr. Mark Collins. I had done EMDR there. I'd been through every therapy known to man to try and access it. And she said, what is it? And I said, it's a block. And she said, we'll try and see what it looks like. And I said, well, it's easy. It's a wooden block. And she said, has it got anything written on it? And I said, well, I've never really thought of that. And so I kind of looked and I said, yeah, Disney. Donald Duck. It's got Donald Duck and like Pluto. And that meant a lot to me as a kid. And my aunt, the nun, had taken me to Disneyland after there was some kind of thing went on. I had to go to the convent in Boston and stay in a special room. And she had taken me and my brother on to Disneyland, and so it meant a lot to me. I'd got plates from there, which was Donald Duck and Pluto and Mickey, rimmed by blue. I still hunt for them when I go out to vintage places. If I found one, I'd get very, very excited. And I remember in Peter Pan, there was a mermaid, and the mermaid was throwing a bubble to one of the lost boys, and that meant a lot to me. And it's weird because I always thought of the real Ira as the lost boys, and I was somehow, I don't know, whether I was being Wendy or whatever. And so I was very interested in Pluto, Donald Duck, and Mickey, like very excited by that. And I said, well, that's weird, but that's probably just because maybe I paid it like that. And she said, no, it's classic Donald Duck mind control programming. And I remember she told me, I felt like I'd been punched in my gut, and I felt a feeling of just terror, paranoia. And I remember I brought up Google and I could barely put the words in, and I put Donald, pause, Duck, pause, programming. And I thought, nothing's going to come up. That girl's a nutter. Nothing's going to come up. And she's not a nutter, by the way. It was me hoping that she would be. She's very intelligent. And so I pressed, oh God, there was reams and reams and reams on it. So I began to study, began to take the group more seriously, interact with them. They kicked me out. One of the one who ran it, Anna, who had approached me, made a post about someone called Colonel Michael Aquino, and said the person responsible for these programs that you've been in, people, is this man, Colonel Michael Aquino. I mean, I'm an investigative journalist, for God's sake. Does she think I was going to just, click past? So I immediately looked on the internet, tried to track this man down to ask him had he been involved with the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, specifically the orphanage where I was, had he been to London. I did find a document online, he had been to Dublin, but I wanted to talk to him. Obviously, if I had this weird shit put into me, I wanted to talk to him. And so I emailed him to get response email, tracked down someone called Douglas Dietrich, supposedly a friend of his back then, and Dietrich, I had a weird experience with Aquino. I was trying to go to sleep, and this girl, Louise, from the group, had been making me try and find out about she said, you'll have alters. And I said, I haven't got alters. And she goes, yeah, you will have altars. So I thought, well, herein actually. But she said, get like about 6 notepads and use them for your different parts. So I thought, well, I'll do this, but I don't believe in it. Anyway, she said, when you're in a different state of mind, write in them. So I started writing it, and gradually it built it up. I gave them all names. And there was one, I started to see these parts of me and realize how they played a sort. I recognize them. For instance, when I got excited about writing to Bianchi, posting to Bianchi, coming out of the post office and feeling quite different and wondering, whoa, what I've been doing for the last 2 hours. And though I remember, it was rather like remembering that you'd spent 2 hours trying on lipsticks in a shop and thinking, hang on, I don't like lipstick. So it was like that. It was weird. So I thought, well, hang on, which part of me wrote to Bianchi? Still actually haven't figured that out. But I started to see a part of me, I called it ice. So it seemed like it was covered in ice. So I called one of my books Ice. And the only thing I ever wrote in there was Project Aquino. And so I emailed him, got no response, went to sleep one night and saw a white rabbit in front of me. And I saw it really clearly in my mind's eye. It had a pink nose and really clear. And I don't really like rabbits. They're spooky, actually, if you ask me. I'd had a really bad dream about rabbits, where rabbits had attacked me one time when I was going to talk to the Guardian about what had gone on at the News of the World. And the rabbits had faced me and said that they were Rupert Murdoch's army and then dived on me. So I thought, hang on, I don't like white rabbits. And I thought, I was trying to get rid of it. And there it was in my mind's eye, this white rabbit, really close up. So I went and got up, splashed my face with cold water to try and get rid of this bunny. Went back, closed my eyes again. The bunny was there. And I was just about to like rage at it. And then it shot off really fast. And then before I could even think, this kind of part of me that I had recognized but not been able to take notes on, ice, I called it, sort of came out of my body and Chase followed him at the same speed. And this is at the speed of sound. This was really fast. So the bunny shot off really fast at the speed of sound. And this part of me, this icy, shot off at the speed of sound too. And it travelled horizontally for quite a way. And then suddenly the bunny dropped down, just went completely vertical. And I dropped down completely vertical, followed it. And landed with a bump at the end of what I can only describe as a rabbit hole. I know it sounds weird what I'm saying, but actually, have I gone off topic? I'm getting over this flu. I feel like shit, so maybe I've gone off topic. I'll go back round to topic. And anyway, so there I was at the bottom of this rabbit hole, and I was face to face with Michael Aquino, and I recognised him from pictures. You know, the woman had posted about him, and I looked at him, and I said, "Oh, I've been trying to interview you," and he said, "What do you want?" And I said, well, I want to find out about these mind control programs. Are they true? Have they gone on? Have I been in one? Did you have anything to do with my Catholic orphanage? And he said to me, no. I mean, what do you want out of life? And I said, oh, well, love, I suppose. And he led me down this corridor. And down this corridor, it's weird. There seemed to be prisoners on either side of me. And we got at the end of the corridor, it was like yellowy, kind of like sandstone. And we got to the end of the corridor and we looked out. And as we looked out, we saw like stars. And it was like looking, there were no planets, but like stars, you know, but they were close up. But they were beautiful. And suddenly what appeared in front of what I now know is presumably a Merkaba. It was a shape within a shape within a shape. And he said, if you climb inside that, you will be able to go through time and come out in the body of anybody who you wish. And I remember for some reason Henry VIII came up in my mind. And I thought about it just a fraction of a second, really. And I thought, well, that's fun. I mean, you could just be like anybody. Marilyn Monroe, but for some reason I want to be Henry VIII. So weird. So I was just about to get in there to go and be Henry VIII, and he and I said to her, I said, hang on a minute though, and he said, what? And I said, but isn't this like not right? And he said, what do you mean not right? And I said, but what about Jesus? And as I said that, it was like boom, right back, slapped in my body. I almost felt the bed reverberate, and I sat up and I thought, whoa, I couldn't believe it. And I looked on Facebook to see if there was anybody in Messenger. If I've got to tell someone about this, I was like, whoa. And there was a guy there called Christian Thomas. He's disappeared now for some reason. And I told him, and he went, oh, holy fuck, you should stay clear of him. He's a really powerful black magician. And I said, well, I didn't really know that. And he said, yeah. He said, he's just given you your first interview. And I'm like, whoa. And we sat up all night talking about it. And I couldn't get over it. It was such a intense experience. It was more real than me now sitting on the laptop talking. And, I was quite overwhelmed by it. And I decided then, because I was so overwhelmed, to talk to him about it. Because I thought, hang on, if it's for real, he will know about it. So I emailed him again. And I said, you've been ignoring me, but I met you last night. Do you remember? And I told him about what had gone on. And I said, I don't care if you think I'm mad. And they just ended it like that. And then I got an email back very soon after. I think I maybe napped a bit because I hadn't slept. I'd been up talking to Christian. And an email came through, and it was a link to Grace Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit song, a link to it, and he said, I'm going to have to get Grace to change the lyrics now to incorporate our little adventure. And that was it. So I was interested, shocked, scared. Christian was making my paranoia worse because he was going, oh my God. And I was like, why? What's going to happen next? But I was a bit scared. Somebody that had the power to somehow hook me in that way of like appearing as a rabbit and then suddenly I'm just after them like kind of lapdog. It seemed weird. And so I tracked down this friend of his, Douglas Dietrich. He had me on his radio show, asked me about it, told me about mind control, and said, oh, you definitely been one of them. And then I looked online. I don't know, maybe Douglas Dietrich told me about Miles Johnson. So I Googled him. And I think there was a girl in a group called Nina as well. She had gone on Miles Johnson's show. And apparently this was your next step, to go and talk to Miles Johnson, to tell him about, oh, this is what's happening in my life. Am I one of these like people? Because there was a few girls who'd done it. Obviously the boys stick up in my mind. I was very interested in James Casbolt. There was Max Spiers, Sarah Adams, another girl beginning with A. Oh gosh, I can't remember. There was another very pretty girl as well with dark hair. I can't remember her. Everybody got stuck into slagging her off for some reason. What's her name? Anyway, her story was interesting. I focused more on James Casbolt because he said he grew up in a Catholic orphanage and was adopted at age 4, the same as me. And I thought, wow, this is for real. This is true. This. I've been used in an experiment in mind control, presumably made for the military. And I thought, how has it fucked me up in my life? And then, unbelievably, I found out that these so-called serial killers, such as Ian Brady, such as Kenneth Bianchi was a big one that Dave McGowan talked about, had also been programmed to kill. And apparently you're programmed for a reason. And apparently, according to Fritz Springmeier, who I became friends with, I was programmed to spy. And the reason why I had been having sex with the commander of the relay array was to spy on him. And suddenly, everything in my life made sense. The whole thing about going to see Brady and being very curious about him and not knowing why rang a bell, because it was almost like I was trying to find out something about him. The whole thing about seeing Kenneth Bianchi's altar and thinking, oh, hang on, it's linked because Brady had an altar. All of a sudden, he's one of them too. So I'd been looking for them because it had happened to me. And I remember one time trying to publish my book about meeting with a publisher, Robert Smith, who later became an agent, and saying there's something about him that's happened to him, that's happened to me, and because I can talk about it, I should talk about it. I don't know what it is. And I thought it was maybe, I don't know, devil's child, or maybe I'm a psychopath, or didn't certainly ever think I'd been in some kind of program, experimental program. So that went on, and I got to know Douglas Dietrich. He introduced me to Revolution Radio. I got a show on the American radio. I've just taken a pause from it because it just seems like anybody that talks out about MK Ultra ends up like Max Spiers dead, ends up like James Casbolt, went to prison for 12 years. It just seems like it's dangerous to talk about it. Kenneth Bianchi came back into my life. Somebody contacted me, said that I'd made him ill after writing the book. I'd really sort of hurt him. She said you could now reach him on JPay, emailing. You can get an app for your phone. Isn't that weird? So I can talk to Kenneth Bianchi on a phone app. I have it on my phone. He has blocked me. I spoke to him. I spoke to him for 6 months. 6 or 7 months, back and fro. I told him excitedly told him about MK Ultra and that he was probably a victim of it, whatever. He didn't want to know. He said to me, Chris, I'm innocent. He's got this Pulitzer Prize winning journalist now, trying to get him out of prison. So I'm just so angry because it's just like, in the ideal fantasy, I would have gone back to Bianchi. Bianchi would have said, really? I would have maybe gone out there to see him. He rang me. He can get phone calls and video calls. I didn't want to do the video call, but when he rang me, I did receive the call. What I noticed when I received the call, I was nervous about it leading up to it because of the psychic attacks before. I had, after entering the Truth Movement and the Mars Johnson circus, been attacked psychically, and it made me have to learn magic. I didn't want to, but I had to. I'd come across Brian Barrett, who taught me that it was basically a jinn that had attacked me around the Bianchi attack, and so I'd learned jinn magic. I'd contacted the jinn. I've done shamanic journeying in the Cath. I have my own jinn. I use him for protection. And Brian Barrett taught me to communicate with Angel Shemyaza. I've been working with Shemyaza for a long time. I've now moved on. I'm working with Raziel. And, I also do still work with Shemyaza, but I've got balls deep in magic. And, I'm working the Tree of Life. There isn't anything, I don't want to read. I'm just looking now at a book called Sefer HaRizem, which is where I fell in love with Angel Raziel after reading it. So I'm balls deep in magic. And that was how, I came across Damien Echols. I think I maybe came across the whole thing before. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did. I distinctly remember something. Maybe doing a radio show about it. I found it interesting, and I didn't know why. I thought at that time that Damien Echols had done it. I'd studied him, I think, a little bit and found out something about he'd written about someone called Rose, who was an entity. And I remember thinking, oh, Rose did it. He didn't do it. Rose did it. And I remember thinking about, you know, Brady and Bianchi. And with Brady, he was, he had a side that was like a woman. And with Bianchi, when he's confessing, when the part that really drew me to him was when he was talking about the killings, and he kind of goes like, I did that one, Angelo did that one, he did that one, I did that one. Has that cunt done her hair differently? Could it be her, the one I did? No, I did that one I did, that one he did. And there was something about it that sort of really, I don't know, resonated something with me, and I could never put my finger on what it is. And eventually I worked it out that that's a woman speaking. It's a feminine altar. And these female entities, whether entities or altars, they can push people into killing, you know, into actually destroying. And they always seem to go for other women or children. And I don't know what they are. Are they entities that are like witches that are circulating? But, you know, you get all these people, Chris Berry D, Caroline Lee, they're up at the Crime Con next week going, serial killers are, you know, they're like Hannibal Lecter, and, you know, they're really scary, you know, but none of them actually know serial killers. Was I invited there? No, I wasn't invited there. I actually know two really bloody well for year upon year upon year upon year. And I would say that it is that did it. The feminine, the dark feminine is some kind of form, which made me look at Damien Echols and think, did Rose jump through and use him to kill? I mean, I don't know what these beings are. Max Spiers knew about them. He called them something. Do you know, I don't even remember. Wow, I just can't reach that. Yeah, so I don't know, but, you know, I just wondered in that case, you know, was Damien Echols maybe MK Ultra, or Monarch victim? But maybe not, because, you know, I asked, gosh, I got a really bad headache now. I asked people, you know, to comment on the show, and they'll go, oh, no, he's innocent, he didn't do it. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then like, well, what, are you going to accuse him of doing it on a podcast? So no, I'm not. I don't know what I'm doing, actually. I just had the urge to share, in some kind of way, the thoughts that were going around my head, about MK Ultra, about Monarch, about the whole thing. I just feel, as regards that case, I just feel that, I don't know, just like, you know, when the Illuminati are sort of surging around someone, I just feel like sometimes they're in a certain amount of danger, you know, that there's a certain amount of jigged around, and yeah, I don't like it. So I'm just really wary, you know, of him and his life, and what, you know, whether he's in any, you know, whether he's in any kind of danger. The Illuminati are dark, and they surround people, and then they give them this, they give them that, and they sort of lift them up, and they befriend them, and then before you know it, you know, this weird shit going on. So I don't know what's happened in his case. I haven't studied the case. I'm going to get attacked now, by all sides and everyone, and, you know, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody. I just, I want to share, and I don't know why I want to share, and I've totally rambled off topic anyway. So I'll probably put this up, and then if I don't get anyone interested commenting below, I'll probably take it down. I haven't got anything to say that I want to say out there. I'm just sharing because I got the urge to do it, and it wouldn't go away. Like a kind of itch that could be scratched. The other lady that comes on with me,
She was like, oh, I don't want to do it. And I said, well, maybe interview me about it, but I'm not sure I want to say. And she said, no, you just go on talking. Not that you're boring when you talk. Oh, right. Not that I'm boring. So I hope I haven't bored anybody. Maybe I am boring. But you know, I don't really care. I don't really care that I'm boring. I'm doing this for myself. If anybody gets anything out of it, if anybody's been through MK Ultra, if anybody, studied it, whatever, share below and just open, I'm just rapping here. I'm not trying to be anything. I don't want to be, any leading light on MK Ultra. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. I'm of a certain age. All I care about right now is my relationship with Spirit, is my relationship with God. The reason why I do the communication with angels, why I work, was to get close to God. That's the only way. So all I care about is my relation to God right now. I don't care about what this human or that human or that human or this human thinks about me, because we're all hamsters. We are all hamsters, okay? So I don't care if a group of hamsters thinks I'm an arsehole, or this hamster thinks I'm boring, or this hamster thinks, what are you doing now? He's saying that for, or whatever, or this hamster, oh, you're a nomad. Yeah, I am a nomad. I'm a hamster. We're all hamsters. All hamsters are nomarks. Every single hamster is a nomark. Anybody that's produced good art or good writing, that's because something angelic has come through them, okay? So the only individuals, the only life form that is worth interacting with is the angelic, okay? And if people aren't bothering to do that, then they're even more stuck in their hamster cage. So as I say, I've just done this because I'm just coming out of my flu. Was it COVID? Probably. I'm going to do another podcast about how I got over it, and got over it using magic, actually, not mine, it was Brian's. So I'm going to share about that, but I know nobody will believe that, so I'm going to have some more energy before I do that. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Sorry it was completely off topic.